Welcome, everyone. Welcome again. If you heard me before, my name is Juniper. I'm the managing producer for Feldenkrais Access, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you all. This is a live chat with Raz Ori, who will be talking about his upcoming class series, Restoring Lightness, and that will start on February 20th. With the first class will be live and free. So I hope you'll join us. And Raz, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Juniper. Welcome everyone to our live chat. I'll be happy to take your questions once we get rolling. And happy to be able to speak about my upcoming class series, Restoring Lightness, which will be all about our ability to find lightness and ease in our body, with ourselves, in relationship to our environment, also in our daily life and daily activities.
Raz, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the series, specifically because the previous series that you've taught for Feldenkrais Access, you've been teaching for Feldenkrais Access for a number of years, about 4 or 5 years since we started. And the previous classes that you taught, including Healthy Eyes and Vision, the Better Walking Trilogy, and most recently, your amazing class series on chronic pain, they were very pragmatic in their approach. And this class series sounds less pragmatic, but I was wondering if you could maybe address that and tell us a little bit more about it.
Yes, excellent. Well, in all of the series classes that I've taught, the central argument, whether it was the organization of our eyes, the organization of our hips, or how we organize ourselves physically and mentally around dealing with pain, we're all on the premises that we can always find more efficiency, more ease, and more lightness in our self-organization. And I understand that this class series is not titled around any specific body part, but even when we were working on making our ankles and our toes more engaged and more flexible in order to improve our walking, it was always related to the entirety of ourselves, to the usage of our full body and our full self-carriage. And how do we find better connections and better organization between our feet and our walking and the entirety of ourselves? And in this class series, we will work on very universal, very general principles of finding general sense of ease and lightness in our body, which would be relevant for everyone and would be around using our entire self to find more grace, more harmony, and a more coordinated pattern of movement. And it would all be connected to, again, daily life activities. So we would use the ideas that we will explore inside the lessons to improve the way that we stand, to improve the way that we can use ourselves in space, to move around space, the way that we can walk, the way that we sit. So all of the lessons will have very concrete applications to daily life and daily activities.
Great. Thank you, Roz. I hope that some of our listeners were inspired by that and will write some questions into the chat. Oh, we got one from Darlene who writes, will you be speaking about how our brain picks up and learns these new patterns?
Excellent question. So let's go back to actually, why do we not feel lightness and ease? What is it, and why do we feel, do we sense our movements and our body as stiff or dense or heavy? Why is it that we feel that in order to move our body, we need to work against resistance? So in fact, we've developed patterns of movement, and we've become habituated to moving with working against resistance. with the idea that in order to achieve movement, you need to struggle. So the way that we form new patterns is by trying to convince ourselves through our bodily sensations, through sensing our own movement, that there is actually a better alternative and that there is an advantage to new patterns of movement that are based not on pushing through, struggling, and working against resistance, but based actually on trying to find the path of least resistance and the way to move in which you don't need to push through and struggle against some intrinsic resistance in the body, but you can actually find lightness and ease. So the idea of how the brain learns is only if we provide it with the advantage, with the sensation of the advantage. And in fact, our brain is seeking those improvements. Our brain is seeking more efficiency, more lightness, and more ease. But we became so habituated to always working with struggle, we forgot, or our brain forgot, that there is actually a better option. So what we're trying to do is to reignite and revive the ability of our brain, the ability of ourselves to actually feel that, oh, there is a different way, there is an alternative, there is an easier path that doesn't require so much effort and struggle. And yeah, that would be the principal argument and the convincing point for being able to change and shift our patterns of movement.
Raz, I know that diversity of movement is one of the things that this course will be focusing on. Can you talk a little bit more about that specifically in relationship to our habits and how this course will be beneficial?
Absolutely. So one of the central factors for why we become habituated to moving with resistance and stiffness has to do with lack of diversity in our daily life. So most of us have a very narrow repertoire of daily movements, very patterned, and I would even say automated in our daily life. And we know that for healthy movement, we need variety. But of course, if the variety of movements are always done under this concept, under the umbrella of movement is a struggle, and in order to move, you need to push through, then even variety of movement doesn't really help. So what we actually need is variety in movements, but that they all can offer the sensation of ease, that they can all set us up for being able to find these paths of least resistance as an alternative to struggling and pushing through.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raz. We got a question from Jillian, who's just asking if this will be recorded. And yes, it's live on social media, and you'll be able to replay the recording after for sure. Raz, can you talk a little bit about the potential positive implications to our emotional well-being that this course offers?
Excellent. So what happens when we become habituated to working against resistance? And if that resistance is intrinsic, meaning it's coming from our own selves, it's our own body, our own habits that make it hard for us to move or create the sensation of stiffness and struggle. Well, it requires a lot of energy because nothing is easy. Everything is work. And over a prolonged period of time, it can also be very demotivating, demoralizing, meaning that it can also take an emotional and mental, psychological toll on us if simple movements and daily movements are always a struggle. So the antidote to that would be finding lightness, restoring lightness, of course, and the psychological and emotional effect of being able with your body, with yourself, meaning there isn't an external source to bring you lightness. It's you. It's the changing of your own patterns. I will be there just to guide you how to retrieve that ability. But it's not that you're going to become lighter because somebody gave you a present or you got promoted to a new job. You're going to feel more lightness because something intrinsically is going to change in how you hold yourself, move yourself, manage yourself, relate to your own body. And that has a very, very uplifting effect, uplifting, literally uplifting, but also emotionally and psychologically, a very uplifting effect, realizing that with yourself, you can find more positivity and you can find more lightness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Darlene has a follow-up question to the question about how the brain picks up and learns the new patterns. She's asking if there is a certain time during the lesson that this happens, for example, during contraction or releasing or resting.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. When do we consolidate the new learning? When does the new pattern or the new learning actually sinks in? That's a very hard question to answer because we know that learning is not a linear process, and to learning there are many different stages. So finding lightness within a particular movement practiced on the floor is a first step. Then being able to create variations for that movement and more complexity in that specific movement, all the while maintaining that sensation of lightness, well, that's another step. Now, using that movement in an upright position at the end of the class, as we many times do, we get up at the end of the lesson and we try to do a similar movement in standing or in walking. That's another step of the lesson, being then to find that lightness in a similar movement in your daily life when you're waiting for the bus, making a sandwich in your kitchen, whatnot. That's another step. So for you specifically, which of these steps are you going to find with each movement? It's hard to say, but for sure, during the lesson itself, you will feel the changes in your ability to perceive what is effortful and what is easy. You will be able to perceive during the lesson itself, when are you pushing excessively and when is there resistance in the body that makes it hard for you to move, and what is the alternative path for that pattern. Hopefully, you'll get up at the end of the lesson. You'll keep feeling that sensation when you get up. But it could be that you would need to repeat that lesson a few times before you can actually carry it over into walking and feeling that sensation of lightness throughout the day. But again, it's a matter of practice. And I believe in our intelligence, in our internal intelligence, and in our efficiency, lightness seeking brain that is looking for those changes, is looking for those improvements. All we need to do is create the conditions for our brain to be able to pick up that information, to treat it nicely, to give it the opportunities, to repeat the lessons until it accumulates and consolidates the new learning.
Roz, for anyone who's listening and they're wondering, is this course for them? Can you speak a little bit about who your audience is and who you think could most benefit from the class series?
We all move. Some of us move more, some of us move less. Some of us move mainly as we sit on an office chair, but we still move. Some of us move mainly as we stand or walk, but we all move to some extent or another. So you need to ask yourself, when I move, does it feel harmonious? Do I feel my movements as easy movements? Is there fluidity in my movement? Is there satisfaction, pleasure in the sensation of being able to move in this world? Again, whether you move a lot or less, whether you have some movement restrictions or challenges or not, but it's a universal question. And if you feel that there is stiffness, there is a lack of fluidity, moving is not a very pleasurable experience, it means that there's something for you to find with yourself and how to be able to use your own body and your own movements to be a more resourceful, to be a better source for your own sensation of yourself, of lightness and ease. So basically, everybody. This class series is for everybody.
I love that. And I was thinking about some of the different kind of categories of people who might benefit from it. One of the things that I thought of was athletes or musicians, people who use their body in a professional capacity. Could you speak a little bit about how this class series might help them?
Sure. So again, it's the same principle. How habituated are you to achieving through working hard? But there's working hard because there's a lot of work to be done, but then there's working hard from not being fully organized, meaning that there's intrinsic restrictions, intrinsic resistances within you that you need to overcome. That creates a lot of wear and tear. That creates a type of burnout. So if you go to the gym or you do some sort of physical sports activity, are you habituated to struggling with that specific skill? And again, there's a difference between working hard because you're lifting a heavy weight or lifting a heavy weight with a lot of effort. A lot of effort means that you cannot fully enjoy what you're doing, or you cannot fully appreciate that there is improvement without struggle. And if the improvement is always associated with a struggle, you find yourself in a conflicted situation. Same thing for musicians. Music should be a beautiful thing, a pleasurable thing for everyone, also for the players themselves or for the singers. But a lot of musicians became habituated for practicing through struggle. That improvement requires effort, it requires overcoming resistance. It's always through struggle. So they lose the joy, they lose the pleasure, they lose the comfort in their body, which of course has a huge toll on the muscles and the strain and the joints and the whole organization of the musician, when there can actually be an alternative way to find how to practice and how to learn, how to improve through pleasure, through joy, through working on the things that you're good at to be able to lead you towards a path of improvement and excellency, and not through where you have a fault through which you need to muscle through.
Great. Another kind of group of people that I was thinking would greatly benefit by this class series are people who are recovering from injury or surgery or issues of limited mobility. And we actually got a question from someone in YouTube, Jillian, who writes, I'm having difficulty standing and walking due to painful knees. But their question is, could I do this lesson sitting down? But maybe you could talk about that and address Jillian's question specifically, but also how this class series would help other people who are recovering from injury or mobility issues.
Yes. So first of all, during most of the lessons will be done lying down on the floor, but we always have someone demonstrating how to do the lesson in sitting in case you cannot lie down on the floor, in case you have some limitation or restriction. So again, what we're trying to aim for is when we have pain and when we feel restricted, the sensation of the pain and the restriction dominates our self-perception. Our attention is drawn to those areas in which we have pain. The sensation of pain and the sensation of restrictions dominate our self-perception. And we try to organize ourselves around that, but the pain and the restriction always somehow takes the upper hand because of how dominant they are. So part of what we're going to do is to find very practical tools and understanding basic ideas of the mechanisms in the body, how movement in the body works, that actually enables the body to find efficient movement. And that efficient movement can be found even if there is a restriction, even if there's pain. So the antidote to pain and restriction would always be to find where in the body and which movements in the body are actually not restricted. Okay, I have pain in my knees, but let's say I don't have any pain in my neck. The movements of my head can be light and free, and that can influence, just like pain can pull me down towards, just like pain or restriction can have a negative influence on how I move. If I highlight where I have freedom and ease, that can influence that can have a positive influence on how I move. So we want to bring those areas in our body and those types of movements in our body that are not restricted towards the front part of the stage, towards the front part of our attention, to try to let them dominate and dictate how we should actually be exploring our own movements, how we should be finding our way through life.
Great. Thank you for that, Ross. That was a very inspiring answer. Anyone who's recently dropped in, please put a question or a comment into the chat. We're talking with Roz about his upcoming class series, and we'd love to hear from you. Roz, can you talk a little bit more about the structure of the class? I was thinking about how I'll just say a little bit and then maybe you can pick up. There's the ability for all the students to communicate with you directly through leaving a comment in each chapter. And there's also the support of the assistant teacher who's there during the class, and the Q&As where you'll be directly communicating with the students. Would you like to say something more about that, about how the structure of the class integrates a supportive environment for the students in a way in which it's unique and supportive?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So part of the learning process, and this taps back to one of the previous questions of when do we actually consolidate the learning? So part of the learning process is that the lessons, or through doing the lessons, exploring these lessons, you will recognize things about yourself. Sometimes you'll recognize things that are unfamiliar to you, that you realize that, oh, I have this pattern of always doing this when I do this. Oh, now I realize that every time that I sit, I do this, and maybe that's not very beneficial. So we have these channels of communication where, after you explore the lesson, if you find new findings about yourself, if you discover new things about yourself that you do not fully understand or do not fully know what to do with, you can come back to us. So you can write questions directly to me through the comments section in the library in that specific chapter of the lesson, through your library in Feldenkrais Access. I see those comments usually instantaneously, and we can chat about those issues through the comments section. And from previous experience, from previous classes, it's just a fantastic way to communicate, and I've helped students resolve particular issues, particular confusions, particular questions that they didn't know how to manage or go about as they were exploring the class series about themselves, or about particular details in the class itself. And it's just a fantastic platform for us to be able to be in direct communication.
And just to add that I know Roz responds to questions very, very promptly, and I think it's a really inspiring process for you too, Roz, as you're developing the program and teaching it, that you can kind of shift and change things to address the specific needs of the students.
Yes, absolutely.
Could you say a little bit? We don't have much time left, but in the time that's remaining, unless we get another question, maybe you could say something for the people in the audience who are unfamiliar with the Feldenkrais method, a kind of cliff notes of how the Feldenkrais method works and how it restores lightness
Mm.
and ease.
So one of the main principles in the Feldenkrais work is that we can improve by reducing the efforts, that we can improve by being motivated to improvement. For sure, we can be motivated to improve ourselves, but there is a way that our motivation will not be expressed as muscling through, as pushing through, as forcing something to change and shift. So this idea of working on myself, but actually taking a step back in my motivation, in my achievement, to allow my nervous system, allow my brain, allow my body, allow me, myself, to learn what is actually the pattern that I'm doing, what is my habit of behavior, and to then allow my brain, assuming that it is an efficiency seeking brain, and allow the inner intelligence of my brain to map out and sort out the different components of my pattern and my habit to try to eliminate those that are interfering with the fluidity, with the lightness, with the ease. So the idea is that efficient action, efficient movement is easy, is light, not just not just fast, not just strong, not just big, but light and easy. So we need to find how to fine tune those different resistances that we have inside that impede our ability to find lightness. And that is the unique approach of the Feldenkrais method, that by actually doing less, by reducing the effort, by being more attentive to the details of what we do, and then there are particular strategies that we use to how should I say, to try to convince our brain that there is more lightness, to try to make the movement more appealing to our nervous system, to our sensory systems that continuously monitor what we do. So those specific strategies, that would be in the lessons in themselves. You will see all those specific strategies in how I construct the lessons.
That's so wonderful. And I'd just like to tag on to say that for anyone who's considering taking this course and who's unfamiliar with the Feldenkrais method, come to class 1 because it's free on February 20th. Anything else, Roz?
Yeah, I hope to see you. Please do come to class 1. We will already in class 1, we will explore how a particular movement that might seem and feel as if though it requires effort and that there's some sort of struggle in that movement, how we can make it easier and lighter without needing to work hard, without struggling against the struggle, without working forcefully against the resistance, but actually circumventing that disorganization or circumventing the need to work against those intrinsic restrictions to then be able to find more lightness and ease. So yes, I hope you'll come to the first class and we'll enjoy it together.